Our next presenter will be our city engineer, Dominic Milano, and he's going to give us a fiscal year 15-16 capital projects update.
Excuse me while I get ready. This evening what we're going to be talking about is our street projects, our storm drain projects, sewer projects, water projects, traffic calming, and some signalization modifications. The first slide, it just is an indication of how many water services have been replaced and storm and meters reset locations just on the 3rd Street project alone. Initially, I was going to make this presentation using the small maps that we have over here, but I couldn't read them from 20 feet, so I'm sure nobody else out there can read them either. So what I'm going to do, instead of going through some of the other slides I have as backup, is that Sam is going to be pointing at the different streets, and I'll be explaining what we're doing on those streets. As I move through the presentation here. The first one I want to talk about is the pavement management, which is our phase 1, which was about 6 or 7 different streets, including stuff like Hillside, Valley View, Sierra, Hialeah, Lookout Point, 4th Street. This was basically a grind and overlay pavement management program with very little of the complete removals. We started out with more removals and replacements initially, but what we found out is that a lot of our water services are not exactly where they're supposed to be. In other words, they're very, very shallow, and we started hitting them immediately, just going down about 12 inches to do the pavement repair. So then we backed off of that and did a heavy grind and just a heavy overlay. It obviously saved us some money. It didn't get the street section that I was really looking for that would last 40 or 50 years, but at least we got a street section in there that's good for probably about 30 years. The next one we had is our phase 2, which is Norco Drive. Again, Norco Drive started out to be a full depth recycling, where we're grinding up the asphalt, we're grinding up whatever base material we had out there and some of the dirt, putting cement in it and creating a very good base, and then putting a thinner asphalt section over the top of it. But just like the other projects that we had at the other side of town, we immediately found out when the grinder got out there and started going down 10, 12 inches, again we started hitting water services and breaking them. And so we pulled off of that concept and then went to a light grind, heavier at the curb lines, and then a heavy structural section of asphalt to be placed there. Again, it's not exactly what we wanted to do to start with, but it saved us money in the long run. I was able to do some more grind and overlays on a section of Norco Drive that I was just going to do a Cape Seal, which is basically a 3/8 inch rock, an emulsion with a slurry over the top of it. So what I lost in longevity on a portion of that street, I gained longevity in another section in which I was just going to do the Cape Seal. The third project I'm going to talk about is 3rd Street. Now this was our major project for the year. This one we started out as a grind and overlay about 5 years ago designing it. We then went to curb and gutter. We then went back to grind and overlay, and then we went back to a curb and gutter to control water flow. So I designed that project 4 times. The 4th time was basically because we decided if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right and put a storm drain system in at the same time. And I'll start talking about the storm drain system on the next set of slides. This project is still under construction right now. It probably has about another 30 days before they're completed and everything will be drivable. The other 2 projects I talk about, Norco Drive and the phase 1 for the PMS program, that will be completed by Friday of this week with all the striping down. The project that we're looking at for the 3rd Street is about $1.25 million. So it is a major project, a major undertaking. The last project we're going to talk about is a slurry seal project and a Cape Seal project that we haven't designed yet, but we'll have it under construction in March after hopefully the rainy season has subsided. And basically that will be 6th Street from Sierra all the way to Crestview, and also a portion of Hamner Avenue on the south side of Hamner, the south end of Hamner. Once we've done the final counting, I think I'm going to have enough money left over where I don't have to do the Cape Seal. I can actually do a grind and overlay on those sections and get a better structural section and a better street last. These charts are exactly what I just went over of the pavement management phase 1, the phase 2, 3rd Street, and then the slurry program. We have budgeted in the slurry $262,000, of which I think I want to have extra money from the phase 1 and phase 2 to up that slightly. That will give me the amount of money to do the grind and overlays. The first one I want to talk about is we call the N7 lateral. This is the first phase, and it's located on 3rd Street under the construction that we're doing currently. People ask me why we outletted it like we did and didn't complete the whole storm drain, only built the top half. Generally, we never build the top half first, we build the bottom half and then work upstream. Unfortunately, if we're going to redo 3rd Street, I needed to put the storm drain in now because I don't want to dig it up in 3 years. Makes us look bad and it's a waste of lots of money. That's why we see it outletting on the lower Reservoir Street currently. Phase 2, which is under design right now, and we're actually going through Caltrans to get the connection permit, is the extension of that takes it all the way to Valley View, solves the flooding in front of a couple of different homes on Reservoir, and also stops the flooding on a home on Valley View. That one, like I said, is under design. And I was hoping to have it under construction by this winter, but it looks like it'd be probably February, March before we get the permit from Caltrans, and the construction will then immediately start. That will complete that particular storm drain system. The next one we have, which is under design, is a Temescal storm drain lateral. And then the one after that will be the Pedley storm drain lateral, and then the Corona storm drain lateral. All 3 of these projects, 2 of them are already under design by another firm, and we have to go out for a 3rd one on Corona to a different company so we can get all of these put together and packaged probably into one. These 3 laterals will solve just local flooding conditions. That's just a picture of a typical storm, it's an atypical storm drain, very, very deep. Not one that we're accomplishing and doing right now today. These are just the information I just went over. And now we're going to move to the water programs. I'll go through the pictures first because they're kind of neat, then I'll back up. That's my favorite picture. That's what we're trying to solve with most of our water programs that we're going to be talking about this evening. First one is the Vine Street water line. This one we completed just recently. It was about 2,600 lineal feet of water line to replace an 8-inch with a 12-inch to give additional capacity. The cost of that was about $550,000. The next one is Temescal water line. That is to replace a 6-inch with another 10-inch, again to increase the capacity of our water system. The estimated cost for that is about $460,000, and we'll begin the design in December of this year, and hopefully have it under construction by March or April of next year. The Bluff Street water line. This one is again as a replacement. We're putting in a 16-inch transmission line, which will be part of the Bluff Reservoir system that I'll talk about next. Again, this one is about 3,900 lineal feet, and it is now under construction probably in about 2 weeks. About 2 weeks, that one will start. Then the big project for the year, and we've been working on this for over a year, is the Bluff Street reservoirs. This is a $2.5 million project, of which we're constructing 2 1-million-gallon reservoirs to increase the capacity in the Bluff area. The design is about 80% complete at this time, and it has a chlorination facility with it and all kinds of other neat little buildings and outbuildings to clear the water for drinking purposes. The Valley View water line is the next one, and that construction will occur in 2016, and it's another $560,000 project, again between 6th and 7th Street, and again that's to increase the capacity of the water system. We have a bunch of other small little jobs. One of them we call the SCADA updates. Small is like $350,000, but that is our signals that transmit from our reservoirs and all our other handling facilities to the central point so we can tell what is happening in the system. We have it in place right now, but this is going to upgrade it and modernization of that program. Next, we're going to talk about our sewer system. I'll show the one and only picture. This picture right here is a lift station, the top end, the clean end of a lift station. We just threw that in to show you that we do have lift stations in town that pump the sewage from a lower elevation to a higher. But again, we showed you the clean end of it. The first lift station that we're going to be talking about is the Corona #1 and Valley View #8 lift station. This one is under design, we'll start designing probably next month for construction in February 2016. And these lift stations are not cheap. They're $890,000 to fix and correct these two lift stations. We also have a rehab of a large siphon #14. Which is starting to erode out. And basically a siphon is that I have to get sewage from this place to this place, and I got to go under here. So basically it relies on pressure to bring the sewage up and over and down to the downstream end. Again, that was strictly as a rehab project, not a reconstruction. We also have a couple of minor projects like a Valley View force main, which I got a manhole failing. It's only a $25,000 project, but we decided to put it in the slideshow too. Then almost the most controversial of our projects was equestrian trail fencing. As we talked about, Erwin talked about earlier, is that we changed the standard and gone to a white vinyl fencing as a standard because of the longevity of that fencing lasting. As we know, the wood fencing through the flat ends of Norco is failing, and we also have failures up on the new end of the homes that are about 15 to 16 years old. LMD #4 up there voted themselves or agreed to the assessments to go ahead and repair over a 10-year period all of the fencing up there and replacement with vinyl fencing. That is currently under construction right now, and that's almost 15,000 lineal feet of white fencing is going in up there. Down in the citywide, the city has funded 11,400 lineal feet on various streets, and that is under construction also right now. Intersection enhancement programs. We've also thrown a lot of money into the capital budget for this program. The first one up there is the addition of 2nd Street turn lanes for southbound Hamner to eastbound 2nd Street. That is an intersection that gets congested very easily. And what we're going to do is widen 2 left turn lanes. It's under design with a traffic engineer right now. And it's basically a striping type project. I can make it everything fit in there without signal modification. Relatively inexpensive, but it does need the study. The second one is additional left turn lanes for southbound Hamner to eastbound Hidden Valley Parkway. Same issue, traffic backs up, starts blocking the #1 lane. So what we're going to try to do is put 2 left-hand turn lanes in at that intersection also. Hopefully, again, this is strictly a striping project and I don't have to mount additional signal heads on those poles. If indeed it's just a striping, both these projects can be done in January of next year. Third project we have is an addition of a second left turn lane to southbound Hamner to eastbound 6th Street. And the widening of 6th Street to create a right-hand turn lane to get onto southbound I-15 freeway. This is a major project, it's a major undertaking. We do have the right-of-way to widen out that street. It was done when the Starbucks Center that went in, we do have the right-of-way. We're going to be contracting out with a private design firm to go ahead and get that designed. And while the construction is open, we are probably going to push it hard to get it done because because of the opening of the sports complex and equestrian complex on Hamner, we're starting to see a backup in there, and it's actually part of the environmental impact report that is a mitigation measure for traffic. The next one is the traffic signal modification of the intersection of Hidden Valley Parkway and the I-15 freeway. This goes into the Gateway Marketplace. There's a backup in there also, and we have the traffic engineers looking at that right now to see what we can do to enhance the signal. It's probably going to be enhancement of the signals and a dedicated left turn lane to make that intersection work correctly. I don't have a budget for that, but if we anticipate construction in March of 2016, first I want to see what the design comes back and what I have to do at that intersection to make it work. The last project on our list, which is budgeted also, is 2nd Street underneath the I-15 freeway. As we have that vacant piece of property there on the south, would be the southeast corner of the freeway and 2nd Street. The equestrians that are on the south side of the street, basically it's at Valley View. That's where the equestrian trail ends. They can go out the street, but they can't get in and safely cross underneath the freeway. We're under design right now with the traffic engineering firm to go ahead and find out what we have to do. Unfortunately, that is a very expensive project and estimated about $275,000 to make the signal modifications. And the very unfortunate part is that's not under our control, it's under Calcan's control for that intersection because it's their signal. But we hope to be successful to get that widened out so the pedestrians and equestrians are safely can cross underneath the freeway. The last topic I got is traffic calming program. This again is another one of the more controversial ones in the city for a couple different reasons, and it's pretty much on the Crestview, North Drive in California. That's where we're going to be studying. Initially, if you look in the capital improvement budget, it just says North Drive. After the meetings we had on Crestview for the enhancements for stormwater control, it became pretty obvious to us, well, we better take that proposal that we had out and go out and get Crestview on it. And so I've talked to the traffic engineers, they're modifying the proposal to add Crestview. During the flooding, I also happened to be on California looking at some issues and decided California should be on that also because they almost ran me over. I said, yeah, I guess when you experience it firsthand, you change your attitude towards a few things and say, okay, it's important to look at that street too. The city has budgeted $275,000 for traffic modifications in the Crestview and the North Drive area. One thing we're going to be doing real quickly is putting up some speed feedback signs on both California and on Crestview. Basically, these are solar-powered signs that tell you how fast you are going. Hopefully, these people will slow down knowing that the speed limit is either 25 or 35 or 15 in the construction zone, as opposed to speeding up to see how fast they can get that thing to blink. Anyway, that is where we stand on the traffic calming. We hope to be back at the beginning of January with the recommendations of the City Council on what we can do to slow down the traffic on those 3 streets. One of the things I've been spending most of my time on is the Crestview storm drain facilities, trying to clean up and hold back the debris and mud from getting onto Crestview. And again, this is to hold back the mud and debris from getting on Crestview. It's nothing, I can't stop the water from getting down there until flood control comes through with the extension of their storm drain system up Mount Shasta and up Mount Rushmore. That will then take the water off the streets, but I got to wait for the county to come through. I think if anybody has been up there, you've seen a lot of changes in the last 45, 60 days, where we installed a lot of K-rails on the street, some K-rails on private property, some very basic erosion control type devices to slow down the water and back up the debris up the canyons and keep it up the canyons. Quickly going over it, what that is a canyon there. We installed some big giant, which looks like Lincoln logs or concrete blocks up that canyon that's been already installed, and that's slowing down the mud and holding the mud down, slowing the water down, gets on the street. B, this is an unfortunate area where somebody did some illegal grading up there to try to create a pad for a house, and the majority of the mud that gets onto Mount Rushmore is coming from B. We've already got K-rails installed on our property because we have a water tank up there, and that should go a long ways of holding back the mud. If we can ever get a hold of the property owner, we do want to install a second series of K-rails up the canyon to even additionally slow some mud down. C, okay, that's a small little canyon that's been in between two homes. We've only cleaned out the basins that are the parkway drains and the storm drain and the V-ditch on that one. We need to get onto Cressalon's property to actually put the debris, the K-rails up there to stop the mud coming down that canyon. Until we get the permission from them, I can't do the final version of what I want to do on C. D, that is all along Crestview, and we've installed K-rails up and down that street and sandbags up and down the street. We're not quite done yet. I got some more that I'll talk about just in a second that I want to install. E, we don't think we're going to need to install them. That is a vacant piece of property. We do have permission to install K-rails on that property if necessary, but we've kind of funneled a lot of the mud flows that may hit the street down into that private property. But again, I don't think at this stage of the game I need to put the K-rails there. F, we've got a number of sandbags already installed in there, and that is another area that I'm looking at, as is the extension all the way up to 7th Street, of where I may need to put some additional sandbags. G, okay, G is predominantly on Cressalon's property. We've installed along the road, and we've installed it in a chevron pattern, some K-rails up the canyon up in there, kind of on their property, but pretty much in a gray area, I like to call it. We think that's going to hold back the majority of the debris at this stage of the game. Now, flood control has on their books designed for a major retention basin and debris basin up that canyon on the Cressalon property. We are in negotiations with Cressalon to at least get permission to be on their property, and hopefully within weeks we can possibly have that permission. We may install some more K-rails, which then goes to H. H is another. The engineering department has a lot of talent. You just don't ever see it. I couldn't have done that. H is basically a series of K-rails, sandbags, cut-off walls, whatever I could do up that canyon to try to stop all of those little minor canyons that we see coming down there from entering the homes that are along the cul-de-sacs that come off of Mount Rushmore. Again, I need their permission to install those information. The city council at the last meeting has allocated the money to do it, as long as we get the permission. Do I have an I up there? Okay, I is some private property of which there's canyons dumping right back into this gentleman's swimming pool and the other people's lots, and once the swimming pool fills up, the mud then fills out and goes out to the street. And that is another mud source that we have on Mount Shasta. The we've had permission from at least one of the property owners to go ahead and put some K-rails on his property to try to stop it there in a spot where we can clean it up before it hits the street. Otherwise, we'll be channeling some of it to the street and trying to stop it again in front of their houses. That concludes...
Two more.
Pardon?
Two more.
Two more?
J and K.
Oh, J and K. I talked about K, the upper one is more additional sandbags that we want to install, and the lower one there again is more sandbags. At that point, we think we've got the mud basically stopped, and now all I need to do is control the water flows. K-rail doesn't do a good job at all controlling water flows because there's cracks in them where I join them up together. And so that's the purpose of the K-rail. Sandbags is just to keep the water on the street. Up and down Mount Rushmore and Mount Shasta, you'll see probably a chevron pattern when it starts to rain of sandbags to try to slow the velocity of the water down and kick it into the street. Again, nothing that I've talked about tonight will stop the water. We're just trying to stop the mud. But when flood control gets the money together and gets the debris basin and permission to do it, the final design would be running storm drains up both those streets, and that will solve a lot of the problem of at least getting the water into a storm drain system as long as I got the mud controlled so it doesn't get into the storm drain, because once it gets in the storm drain, it plugs and then nothing works. That, since it went black, that basically I think concludes my presentation. And so I'm open to any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a map that will show, and I got this idea to ask this meeting because I saw it on TV, cities like Laverne and other areas, and Chino Farm, meeting with the city council, with departments such as yours, with this meeting here, to get ready for El Nino. And I know that there was an area that we were not in a flood area, flood zone, so we didn't have to pick up flood insurance. After the city had the large basins, the concrete sections put up on Corona Avenue, they cut all the way through. Do you know what I'm speaking of? The wash, the cut through. So, would we now be considered in a flood area with expecting the El Nino to hit? Is there a map that shows certain areas that are in danger of possible flooding when El Nino hits, if it does perchance come up to be as bad as it is claimed to be?
No, I do not believe there's a map that exists. We do have a storm drain facilities map that shows some of the flooding areas, but not a map that takes account of an El Nino hits. Laverne's map that you probably refer to is a series of K-rails up some of the canyons that we put in. I'm also a city engineer for Laverne. We put in many, many years ago after a major fire up one of those canyons. All the other drainage facilities, fortunately, in Laverne has retention basins and debris basins installed currently. And so there's only one area that it hasn't burned in 20 years now, so I don't expect to get the flooding and the debris flows anywhere in Laverne. But in Norco, we do not have that map that does that. We're starting working on this type of a system here. And so we will probably be, we'll be developing a map over these next couple of years, absolutely. But at this stage of the game, it never has been done.
And the storm drains, like we have one that's kitty corner from my house, the city has plans to come by pre-January to make sure that there's nothing that's blocking.
The city will be going through every single storm drain. There's been a change in the philosophy of what we're doing here today, and the city Public Works Department, their superintendent will be checking every storm drain from now on. Yes?
When you replace the mains that need to be replaced, do you also replace the connections going up to all the individual houses that are affected by that particular main?
We do not change the lateral all the way up to the meter, but we change the connection at the main line. Yep. Yes?
Trails, are they going to be using the poles that are leaning down to fix the other?
Yes. We sell all the poles that are salvageable are kept at the yard. They're split into two groups. LMD number 4 has its own pile because they paid for that themselves. the citywide has its pile for replacement of the citywide. Well, with that, I guess I must have confused everybody real, yes?
Well, I noticed talking about the calming on California, today they were calming them down, the police were out today. They were giving
I had absolutely nothing to do with that.
Yeah, make sure you get that out there. Be looking for your address.
But next time I'm out there on that street, I'm gonna ask for, you know, a guide.